You can't even pay your own rent, Sienna. What have you actually accomplished? My dad's voice sliced through the chatter like a knife. The sound of silverware clinking against plates faded. My mom, Carol, didn't even look up, just let out that sharp little snort she saved for disappointment. Honestly, at 28, you should be settled, not finding yourself. It's embarrassing. I felt their words hit like cold water down my spine, but I didn't flinch. I'd learned that reacting only fueled their laughter. I looked down at my untouched plate, forcing a polite smile while every nerve in my body burned. Kyle, my older brother, leaned back with his smug grin. Lay off her, guys. Maybe her big break is just around the corner, like the corner in 2040. His wife, Brittany, laughed, too loud, too fake. It was the kind of laughter that made your chest tighten. I had always been the family's favorite target. The dreamer, the failure, the one who never followed the plan. But what they didn't know was that I'd been following my own plan all along. As they mocked, I watched them. The same people who once told me I'd never make it without their help. My dad, the self-proclaimed business genius who almost lost everything 2 years ago. My mom, obsessed with image and gossip. And Kyle, their golden boy, whose successful business was actually running on loans he barely understood. They had no idea that for the past 3 years, I'd been quietly working 16-hour days, pouring every ounce of rejection and humiliation into something real. Something that was already worth more than every asset they owned combined. The dinner continued, every insult masked as concern. My mom leaned forward, voice dripping with false sweetness. Sweetheart, maybe you should just move back home. We could help you get a real job, something steady. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. Thanks, Mom, I said quietly. But I'm doing fine. Kyle chuckled. Doing fine? Selling candles online isn't a career, Sienna. It's a cry for help. Brittany giggled again, her diamond earrings flashing under the chandelier. I looked at each of them, my pulse steadying, my fear dissolving into something colder, something powerful. For years, I'd let their opinions define me, shape me, silence me. But tonight, something inside me shifted. The urge to keep the peace vanished. I realized I didn't owe them my silence anymore. I folded my napkin, placed it neatly beside my plate, and looked my father dead in the eyes. Funny, I said softly. How you think I need your approval to be successful? He frowned, confused. What's that supposed to mean? I leaned back, my voice calm, almost serene. It means the one you've spent years calling useless might just be the reason you still have a roof over your head. The table fell silent. My mother's fork slipped from her hand. Kyle froze mid-smirk. I smiled, genuinely, for the first time that night, because they had no idea what was coming next. My mom leaned forward with that tired sigh she always used when she wanted to sound wise. You should have listened to us and married someone stable, like Mark, she said. He's doing so well now. You'd have a proper life with him. My jaw tightened. Mark, the man who wanted me to give up my dreams and live quietly under his control. The same man my parents still thought was a prize. Dad crossed his arms, his voice firm and full of judgment. Kyle took real risks, built something of value. You, on the other hand, just waste time with those online projects. At some point, you'll have to grow up. I stared at the flickering candle between us, watching the flame bend under the soft air from the vent. It felt like me, burning quietly while everyone tried to blow me out. Something in me shifted. The shame I'd carried for years started to fade, replaced by a strange, calm strength. I lifted my eyes and met his. Are you sure about that, Dad? My voice was even, almost soft. But it made him pause. The table went silent. Even Kyle stopped chewing. He smirked after a second. What's that supposed to mean? You make a few bucks online and suddenly think you're a businesswoman. His words didn't sting anymore. Not this time. I could see the arrogance in his face, the same arrogance that had blinded all of them. Kyle leaned forward, laughing under his breath. Oh, here we go. Let me guess, Sienna's secret success story. What do you even do all day, huh? Sell quotes on Etsy? Maybe a few scented candles? Brittany tried to hide her grin but failed. I looked at them one by one, their faces full of the same smug certainty they'd always worn. Funny thing about success, I said quietly, it doesn't always need to make noise. My mom frowned, annoyed by my calmness. What's that supposed to mean? She asked. I leaned back, taking a slow sip of water. It means that the person you think is useless might be holding up more than you realize. They exchanged confused glances. I didn't elaborate. I wanted them to sit with that thought, to wonder what I meant. For once, I didn't need to defend myself. I didn't need to prove my worth. Their laughter, their mocking, their pity, it all sounded hollow now. I watched Kyle's smirk falter slightly. Maybe he saw something different in my expression. Maybe, for the first time, he felt unsure. Dad tried to laugh it off. You're talking nonsense, Sienna. You don't know what real work looks like. It's fine, we've all had dreams at your age. But reality catches up. I nodded slowly. It does, I said. And it caught up to all of you a while ago. My mom's smile vanished. The tension at the table was thick enough to cut. For years, they'd made me feel small, like I didn't belong. But tonight, they looked uneasy. They didn't know why yet, but they could feel it. Something about me was different now. I folded my hands, calm and certain. Enjoy your dinner, I said quietly. You might want to appreciate this moment. Things are about to change. The room went quiet. The sound of laughter faded, and even the clinking of cutlery stopped. My dad's proud face stiffened, his brows knitting together. What are you talking about, Sienna? He asked, trying to sound calm but failing. I looked straight at him, my voice steady. That business loan you took from First National last year. The one that kept your company from going bankrupt. You might want to check who actually signed for it. For a moment, no one moved. My mom's eyes widened. What do you mean? Your father handled everything. I let out a small, almost sad smile. No, Mom. The bank didn't approve his request. They rejected it twice. The only reason that money ever came through was because someone stepped in to guarantee it. That someone was me. My dad blinked rapidly, confusion mixing with anger. That's ridiculous. You couldn't have. They would have told me. I shook my head slowly. They didn't have to. The bank was lending against my income, my accounts, and my company's record, not yours. You were too far in debt for them to risk anything. Silence wrapped around the table like a thick fog. My mom covered her mouth, whispering, No, that can't be true. Kyle leaned forward, his tone sharp. Wait, you expect us to believe that you have assets big enough to back a business loan? You. I met his stare, unbothered. Believe what you want, but your dad's company would have closed months ago without me. I saw the shock spread across his face. He tried to laugh, but his voice cracked halfway through. You're bluffing. I didn't respond. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, letting them sit with the truth. My dad's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his glass of water. Why would you do that without telling us? He asked finally, his voice much softer now. Because I knew you wouldn't accept help from me, I said. You've made it clear what you think of me, but I couldn't just watch your business crash. Not because I wanted to save your pride, but because it would have taken down our home, Mom's savings, and everything connected to it. My mom's eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt or fear. Kyle's jaw tightened. So, you're saying we owe you? I tilted my head slightly. I'm saying you've been living comfortably because I stepped in when everything else failed. No one spoke after that. My dad's usual confidence was gone. He stared at the table as if trying to find an escape in the wood grain. My mom kept whispering something under her breath, shaking her head. Kyle sat back, arms crossed, trying to look unaffected, but the redness in his face gave him away. I looked around the table, at the people who had mocked me for years, who thought I was a failure. And for the first time, they were speechless. They didn't see me as weak anymore. They didn't even seem to know who I was. I pushed my chair back and stood. You don't have to thank me, I said quietly. Just remember this the next time you call me useless. Then I turned and walked out, leaving them in the silence they'd earned. I could see disbelief written all over their faces. My dad looked pale, my mom kept shaking her head, and Kyle was still trying to convince himself that I was lying. You don't have any real money, Sienna, he said, trying to sound confident. I smiled a little, calm and steady. I don't. I reached into my purse and placed a key fob on the table. The silver logo caught the light. That's just one of the cars, I said quietly. The one I use when I don't feel like taking the company vehicle. Brittany's mouth fell open. Company car? What company? She asked, her voice small. I looked directly at her. The one you all used to laugh about. My little online store. That small idea you thought was a joke is now one of the top 3 artisan marketplaces in the country. The room went completely still. Even the air felt heavy. Kyle frowned, trying to process what I'd just said. You're serious? He asked, his voice uncertain for the first time that night. I nodded and took out my phone. You don't have to take my word for it. I opened my business account and slid the phone across the table toward him. He hesitated before picking it up. When he looked at the screen, his expression changed. The smirk disappeared, replaced by disbelief. He blinked, scrolled, and looked again. "This can't be real," he whispered. I leaned forward slightly. "It is. That's my company's balance after paying taxes, suppliers, and staff." My mom looked lost. "You built all this alone?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Without your help, without anyone's approval. Every late night, every mistake, every small win, it was all mine." My dad's jaw tightened. "If this is true, why didn't you tell us?" he demanded. I met his eyes. "Because you never listened. Every time I tried to share something, you called it a phase. You made fun of me. So I stopped talking and focused on building." Kyle was still staring at the numbers. "This is more than I've made in 10 years, he muttered. "More than all of us combined." I shrugged slightly. "That's not something I ever wanted to rub in. But after all the insults tonight, I think it's fair you finally know the truth." Brittany leaned back, stunned. "So, you're the one keeping everything afloat?" I nodded once. "Yes. Dad's company, the house, even the savings account Mom uses, it all stayed intact because I stepped in. You thought I was drifting, but I was doing the one thing none of you ever did. I was learning quietly and working nonstop." No one spoke for several seconds. My dad looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. My mom's hand trembled as she reached for her glass. Kyle kept glancing at my phone like he was trying to find a flaw, a mistake, something that would make him feel better. I finally stood up and slipped the key fob back into my purse. "I never needed to prove myself to you," I said calmly. "But it feels good that the truth is finally on the table." Then I turned and walked away, leaving them frozen in the silence of their own shock. My dad's voice trembled as he finally spoke. "You let us believe you were struggling. Why would you do that to your own family?" His eyes looked hurt, but I could see the anger hiding behind them. I took a slow breath. "Because you never really cared to know the truth," I said evenly. "You only wanted to hear what fit your version of success. When I didn't fit that image, you stopped listening." He stared at me as if I were someone he didn't recognize. My mom sat frozen, her hand over her chest. "Sienna, what are you saying?" she whispered. I looked at her. "I'm saying that you cared more about appearances than about understanding your own daughter. I didn't hide because I wanted to deceive you. I hid because every time I opened up, you turned it into a competition or a lecture." The words hung in the air, heavy and raw. For once, no one interrupted me. I stood, slowly pushing back my chair, the sound echoing through the dining room. "You called me useless," I said quietly, my eyes moving from one face to the next. "So let's talk about what's actually useless, ignoring the people who would have helped you if you'd only treated them with respect." My dad's brows furrowed. "What are you implying?" I met his eyes. "The house you're living in, the one you think belongs to you, it doesn't." My mom's eyes went wide. "What do you mean?" "That's our home." I gave a small nod. "It was. Until the second mortgage went unpaid. The bank was preparing to repossess it. But before that happened, I stepped in." Kyle frowned, trying to follow. "Stepped in how?" "I didn't just sign as a guarantor," I explained. "I bought the debt outright. The title now has my name on it. Every wall, every brick, every inch of that property, you're living under my ownership." The silence that followed was sharp and painful. My dad's face drained of color. "You can't be serious," he muttered. I nodded again. "I am." My mom's voice broke. "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked at her gently but firmly. "Because you would have refused out of pride. And maybe because part of me wanted you to finally see what happens when you underestimate someone." Kyle slammed his palm on the table. "So what now? You're just going to kick your parents out?" I shook my head. "No, I'm not cruel. I just want you to understand that I'm not the helpless daughter you thought I was. I've spent years being treated like I had nothing to offer. But I'm done pretending I owe you more than the truth." My dad looked like the ground had fallen away beneath him. My mom's eyes filled with tears, though she didn't say anything. I placed my hands on the table, steady and calm. "You wanted control," I said quietly. "Now you'll have to live with the fact that the one person you dismissed is the reason you still have a place to call home." Then I walked away, leaving behind a silence deeper than any argument we'd ever had. The next morning, the city felt quieter than ever. I opened my eyes and realized, for the first time, I was completely free. No voices telling me what I should have done, no guilt eating away at me. Just silence. But it didn't last long. My phone buzzed nonstop, calls from Mom, unread messages piling up. Then one from Kyle popped up on the screen. "You've gone too far." We're meeting at Dad's office. Be there. I stared at the words, my stomach tightening. That was always their way. Demand, not ask. Command, not care. I made myself coffee, trying to steady my hands. I told myself I didn't owe them a thing. Still, the pit in my chest felt heavy. I knew they wouldn't back down easily. They never did. They'd spent their whole lives controlling me, and losing that control would drive them mad. When I finally went downstairs, my doorman stopped me. "Miss Vance, this came for you," he said, holding a thick, white envelope. My name was printed in bold letters. Something about it felt cold, final. I tore it open, and as soon as I saw the first line, my breath caught. It was a legal petition from my own family. They were accusing me of fraud, of using undue influence to take over their home and assets. In other words, they were suing me. My own parents. My own brother. I stood there for a moment, stunned. The people who had belittled me, ignored my success, and laughed at my dreams were now trying to destroy what I'd built. I went back upstairs, the envelope clutched in my hand. I didn't cry. I didn't even scream. I just sat on the couch, staring out at the skyline. It almost felt poetic. The same people who had refused to believe in me were now trying to drag me down using the very system they once said I wasn't smart enough to navigate. The funny part, I knew exactly what they were doing. The lawsuit wasn't about justice. It was about pride. My father couldn't stand that I had turned the tables. Kyle couldn't handle that his useless sister had built more in a few years than he ever would. And Mom? She'd rather see me lose everything than admit she'd chosen the wrong child to believe in. A small laugh escaped me, quiet, bitter, and tired. I texted my lawyer the moment I finished reading. He was already familiar with my family's games. "Forward me everything," he replied. "We'll handle it." For the rest of the day, I didn't move much. I let the truth sink in. This wasn't just about property or money anymore. It was about power, and I wasn't the scared, obedient daughter they used to control. I'd worked too hard to get here. By nightfall, I made my decision. If they wanted a war, I wouldn't hide. I'd face it head-on. Not with anger, but with clarity. They had chosen the battlefield. Now they'd have to live with the consequences. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the outcast of the family. I felt like the one who finally broke free. My hands were trembling, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from a quiet, burning anger. My own family wasn't just lashing out. They were trying to erase everything I had built. The lawsuit wasn't about truth or fairness. It was their way of punishing me for no longer being under their control. I took a deep breath and dialed my lawyer, Mr. Thorne. He was sharp, calm, and never easily shaken. When I explained what had happened, he didn't sound worried. "Sienna, they don't have a case. Everything you did was legal and properly documented. This is nothing more than a bluff." But I knew better. "You don't know them," I said, my voice firm. "They'll twist every word, every detail. They'll lie if they have to. Losing isn't an option for them. It's humiliation." Mr. Thorne was quiet for a moment before replying. "Then we'll prepare for the worst. Send me everything." That was all I needed to hear. For the next 2 days, I barely slept. My apartment turned into a war room. Papers covered my dining table, and my laptop glowed late into the night. I collected every piece of proof that could protect me: wire transfers, tax records, and loan agreements. I dug out the original property deed with my signature and the notarized documents showing I had purchased the mortgage fair and square. Each document told a story. Every number, every signature was a reminder of how hard I had worked for what they took for granted. They had spent years calling me irresponsible, yet here I was, the only one who had managed to save the very house they were living in. I found the receipts for the loan I had paid off to stop their foreclosure, the same debt they now claimed I had stolen. The irony made me laugh, though there was no humor in it. They had no idea how much I had done behind the scenes to keep their world from falling apart. And now they were trying to destroy mine. By the second night, I had filled an entire folder with documents. I labeled everything carefully, scanned and backed it all up on multiple drives. I wasn't going to let them manipulate a single fact. When I finally sent everything to Mr. Thorne, he called within minutes. "You're more organized than most corporate clients," he said with a hint of surprise. I smiled faintly. "That's what happens when you've had to fight for every inch of your life," I replied. As I looked around my apartment, papers neatly stacked, screens turned off, I felt a strange peace. I wasn't the broken daughter anymore. I wasn't begging for their approval. I was ready. This wasn't just about protecting my company or my property. It was about ending years of emotional manipulation. They could throw every lie they had at me, but this time I had proof, power, and the truth on my side. And for the first time, I knew I wasn't just defending myself. I was reclaiming everything they had tried to take from me. The courtroom felt colder than I expected, like all warmth had been drained from the air. My family sat across from me, lined up perfectly, pretending to be the picture of unity and innocence. My mom clutched a tissue dramatically. Kyle glared at me, jaw tight, while my dad avoided my eyes altogether. For years, I had imagined what standing up to them might feel like, but nothing could have prepared me for the weight of this silence. Their lawyer began his performance, painting me as a manipulative daughter who had taken advantage of her confused, aging parents. He spoke as if I had tricked them, stolen their home, and left them with nothing. My mom dabbed her eyes for effect, even letting out a soft sniffle at just the right moment. It was all rehearsed, like they had practiced how to make me look like a monster. When my turn came, Mr. Thorne rose calmly. He didn't raise his voice or rush his words. His tone alone commanded respect. "Your Honor," he began, "my client is not a predator. She's the very reason this family still has a house to live in." He stepped closer to the judge's bench and laid out several neatly organized folders. "These," he continued, "are official bank records, notarized loan documents, and the original deed to the Walker residence, transferred legally and willingly to my client after she cleared her parents' unpaid mortgage debt." The judge flipped through the papers, eyebrows raising slightly. Across the room, my father shifted uncomfortably. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Mr. Thorne held up a single page. "Mr. Walker, do you recognize this document?" My dad squinted, pretending confusion. "That's the guarantor agreement," Mr. Thorne said evenly. "It includes your handwritten note thanking your daughter for stepping in to save your company when the bank refused to help." The room went dead quiet. My dad's mouth opened, then closed again. Finally, he stammered, I was pressured into signing that." "Pressured?" Mr. Thorne asked. "By your daughter who paid off your debts and saved your credit score? Or by the bank that was about to repossess your office equipment?" The question hung in the air like a blade. The judge's gaze hardened slightly as she looked at my father. My mom's tissue froze halfway to her face. Kyle's expression flickered between anger and disbelief. The performance was falling apart. Mr. Thorne wasn't finished. He presented more documents, emails, receipts, and transfer records showing my payments over the years. "Every cent is traceable," he said firmly. This was not manipulation. It was generosity. And it's clear that generosity was repaid with betrayal. I sat quietly, watching their confident posture crumble. My mom looked down, her fake tears drying up. My dad's hands fidgeted with his tie, his voice lost. Kyle muttered something under his breath, but didn't dare speak up. When the judge finally turned to me, her expression softened slightly. "Ms. Walker, you've been through a great deal," she said. "We'll take a short recess." As the gavel struck, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. The truth had finally started to pierce through the lies. For the first time in my life, the power wasn't in their hands, it was in mine. The courtroom fell silent as Mr. Thorne reached into his briefcase and pulled out my phone. His calm confidence made everyone lean in. "Your Honor," he said, "before we move forward, there's one more piece of evidence that should make things very clear." My dad shifted uncomfortably, sensing something was coming. Mr. Thorne handed the phone to the clerk, who connected it to the court monitor. "This," he said, "is a video recorded during the signing of the original guarantor agreement." The screen lit up, and there was my father, smiling, relaxed, a glass of scotch in his hand. The video played clearly, his voice echoing through the courtroom. "To my daughter, the savior of this family, I don't know what we would have done without you." Gasps filled the room. My mom's face went pale, and Kyle's mouth dropped open. The judge looked stunned for a moment before striking the gavel sharply. "Order in the court," he commanded, his tone firm. I glanced at my dad. The color had drained from his face. His lips moved, but no sound came out. The lie he had built so carefully had just collapsed in front of everyone. Mr. Thorne didn't gloat. He simply turned back toward the bench, his voice calm but cutting. "Your Honor, this recorded evidence was submitted with metadata intact, verifying its authenticity. As you can see, the supposed victim of undue influence was in fact celebrating his daughter's generosity." He signed willingly and proudly. The judge nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched until Mr. Thorne spoke again. "There's one final matter," he he said, picking up another document. The petitioner, Kyle Walker, attempted to file a forged quitclaim deed 2 days ago, transferring ownership of the same property to himself. That caused a full eruption in the courtroom. The judge's eyes widened. Forged, he repeated. Mr. Thorne passed the evidence forward. A set of scanned documents with electronic timestamps. We've traced the IP address used for the submission, he explained. It came directly from Mr. Walker's personal laptop. Kyle's face turned red. That's not true, he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The judge's voice boomed back. Sit down, Mr. Walker. This is a courtroom, not a circus. My mom covered her mouth as the truth unfolded. My father's shoulders slumped. All the fight was gone from him. I just sat there, still and silent, letting every second sink in. The judge reviewed the papers carefully, then looked at my lawyer. This case is dismissed with prejudice, he declared firmly. The court finds no evidence of fraud by Ms. Walker. In fact, it appears she acted out of good faith and financial responsibility. As for the plaintiffs, his gaze turned cold. You will face sanctions for perjury and filing a baseless lawsuit. The gavel came down one last time. I exhaled slowly, my hands trembling, not from fear, but relief. Years of silence, humiliation, and guilt had ended in a single moment of truth. As the bailiff called for order, I stood and gathered my things. My parents sat frozen, unable to look at me. Kyle stared at the table, defeated. For the first time in my life, they couldn't twist the story or rewrite the truth. The evidence spoke louder than all their lies. And as I walked out of that courtroom, I knew justice had finally caught up to them. When I stepped out of the courthouse, the afternoon sunlight felt strange, warm but distant. The noise of the city faded into the background as I stood on the steps, breathing in air that finally felt clean. The case was over, the judgment in my favor, and for the first time in years, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Yet, instead of celebration, there was a quiet ache inside me. Winning didn't erase the damage they had done, it just closed the door on it. Behind me, I caught a glimpse of them leaving through a side exit. My mom held onto my dad's arm, their heads low. Kyle trailed behind, his face tight with anger and shame. Not one of them looked my way. Even now, they couldn't face me without their masks slipping. I thought I'd feel satisfaction seeing them defeated, but instead, I just felt tired. They weren't worth the hate anymore. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a text from Mom. For a moment, I just stared at the notification before opening it. Sienna, it read, "We just wanted our daughter back. Can we please talk?" I almost laughed, but it came out as a sigh. The same woman who'd once called me an embarrassment now wanted to talk. I knew exactly what this was. Not love, not regret, just another attempt to pull me back into their control. They weren't reaching out to make peace. They were reaching out because they had lost. For years, I had let their approval define my worth. Every insult, every comparison, every cold silence had chipped away at me until I started to believe I truly was useless. But standing there, free and unburdened, I finally understood the truth. I had never been the problem. I had been the scapegoat they needed to feel superior. I stared at the message a little longer before typing a single reply. You lost that daughter a long time ago. Then I pressed send and blocked every number linked to them. The moment I did, a strange peace washed over me. Quiet, deep, and final. Walking down the courthouse steps, I passed strangers who didn't know or care who I was. And for once, that felt liberating. I wasn't the disappointing daughter, the failed dream, or the family's punching bag anymore. I was just Sienna, a woman who had built herself from nothing and finally chosen herself over people who had never done the same. I took one last look at the city skyline, where everything I'd fought for now stood. My company, my independence, my voice. It wasn't revenge that satisfied me in the end. It was the freedom of no longer needing to prove anything. Some houses are just walls and roofs. Some families are simply people tied by blood, not by love. And sometimes walking away doesn't mean losing. It means reclaiming your life. That day, I didn't just win a court case. I walked away from everything that had ever made me feel small. I left behind their voices, their judgment, their lies. And as the sun hit my face, I smiled softly to myself. I wasn't useless. I was finally free. Do you think I made the right choice by cutting my family off, or should I have forgiven them? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories like mine.